Welcome to the Balanced Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Matt Southam. Here, we delve into candid conversations with entrepreneurs, exploring both their business journey and their secrets to maintaining mental well-being. As we navigate the balance of ambition and inner peace, I hope you find insights, inspiration, and invaluable takeaways in every episode. Thank you for joining us. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the show. I want to start off today by just learning a bit more about your background. Maybe take me back a bit throughout your working life and tell me what I need to know about you.
Okay. Well, thanks for inviting me on your show.
Pleasure.
First of all, I guess to give it some context in terms of so how I ended up working and owning a deli. I kind of go back quite some way to looking at the fact that both my parents are sort of Polish immigrants. My father was working in the restaurant trade, and he was the restaurant manager for the Curzon House Club in Mayfair. And so my early work experience as such, during my A-levels, etc., was working at the Curzon House Club and then also working at Aspinall's gaming club as a barman, wine waiter, sommelier, effectively. And I suppose that experience of working within food kind of always stuck with me. But yeah, sort of as with good first generation immigrant families, the intention is, well, go and have a career. Don't do what we did. And so I, sort of went on my merry way, one way or another, round about in the very early 80s. I basically just responded to an advert which was for Tandy, the electrical stores, or known in the States as Radio Shack. And at that time, they had some computers, the Tandy TRS-1 and things like that. And at the interview, I was asked, well, sort of, I'm not actually looking for anyone to work in our electrical stores. I'm looking for somebody to work in our computer centres. And they had a number of computer centres dotted around the city of London. Long story short, I ended up working there, and that's kind of where my first entry into the world of IT started. And I had a general interest in how computers worked, started fiddling about with them, sort of loading operating systems, stuff like that. Somebody recognized that maybe my role could be more useful in some ways as a technical customer service support person. So that's what I started doing. And then I joined Olivetti, who had just brought out their first IBM compatible computer back in about 84-ish, 83, 84. Working as a reseller support, doing courses in a whole range of software applications which now no longer exist, but things like WordStar and DBase 2 and stuff like that. And then really sort of my career, if you follow anybody's career that seems to have been in IT and ended up in IT sales, it does seem to be a bit of a catalogue of you stay in one job for a given period of time, and then, sort of, and that can sometimes be quite a short period of time, and then you move on to another job and yet another job and yet another job. And that can be for a whole variety of reasons. Either you might suck at that particular, within that particular company and that particular product, or that company may have been bought by somebody, which is obviously has been quite the trend for IT companies, and your job no longer exists. So kind of doing that for a long time. And in 98, I joined a reseller called Integralis. And that's where from 98 through to until 2013, I worked exclusively within the IT security market. So I worked for vendors, I worked for resellers, myself and a couple of colleagues, we started our own business back in about 20-something or other, 2008 or something like that, just after the financial crash, advising companies new to the UK market on how to bring their products into the market and stuff like that. But at the same time, throughout that whole time, I had 3 children, they were all growing up, and I think you can either sort of enjoy doing that and moving from one thing to the next, or you can always feel a little bit as if, for example, you you have some ideas, you want to go in a particular direction, but you're kind of hampered by, obviously, the infrastructure that you're in and the people that are telling you to do things, and you kind of wonder, so I wouldn't do it that way myself, but, I kind of have to. And both myself and my wife got to the point where our youngest had just finished his education. We had an opportunity in that case to say, well, what should we do? Should we do our own thing? I had a kind of hankering and a desire, I suppose, because both of us are real foodies, to actually do something in the food industry. And my wife, having lived and grown up in Norfolk, also had a hankering to come back to Norfolk, and we kind of wanted to live near the sea, but living near the sea requires a lot of money unless you actually work. That's how we ended up in small seaside town in Hunstanton, taking over a business that used to be called the Wine Cellar and Deli, which was predominantly more wine cellar than it was deli. But we wanted it to be far more of a delicatessen, and so our motto to begin with was less wine cellar, more deli, and that was now 10 and a bit years ago.
I mean, that's quite a journey, and I guess sometimes going back to the IT days, often moving through different roles is sometimes just because the IT has changed. So the role that you had at that point, is almost no longer needed because technology changes incredibly quickly.
Well, technology does change very quickly, and I think the thing is, so what you have to always remember with lots of salespeople, and it's not just technology salespeople, but salespeople in general. Each and every one of them, I guess, are sort of their own little entrepreneur to a degree, but in the majority of cases, an entrepreneur with a safety net. In that, an entrepreneur generally, or sort of the general view of an entrepreneur is somebody that goes off on their own, no safety nets, do or die. It's actually going to work or it isn't going to work. There's nobody there to at the end of each month to say, right, well, thanks very much for your efforts. By the way, here's a pile of money for you, which we just put into your bank account. And so you have to be very resilient as well. But at the same time, there are times where some people, as I say, some people are more entrepreneurial and they feel as if they are hampered by others, and they need to break free. And I guess I was one of those.
Yeah, and you've moved into actually running your own business, and actually you've been going quite a while now, so you've seen those different periods. So obviously you went through COVID, which I'm guessing brought its own challenges, although you were a provider of food. So I assume, could you stay open throughout that? But it was...
Well, if we're totally honest, COVID was boom time for people like us. So we do our own. I guess because of my background and a liking for getting involved with technological things. When my son, who is now almost 30, when he was playing for his local under-7s team, they needed somebody to do a website for them. And so I said, stuck my hand up and I said, can't be that difficult. I'll do it. So I've been playing with and doing websites since then. So our website is entirely done in-house. We moved from a platform that we had during COVID to Shopify because there were certain things that the existing or previous platform didn't have, which COVID really helped highlight some of the frailties and the weaknesses in that. But we changed a couple of pages literally overnight during COVID to allow people to not click and collect, but sort of order online for delivery. And we were just, the shop was open. We had a table at the front door, so people could come to the front door, stand a couple of steps away from us, and ask us for things that they wanted, and then we'd go and get it. But the majority of everything was done online. And then leading up towards Christmas, any business that's already did hampers, for example, suddenly discovered that with businesses not doing Christmas parties, the alternative for let's say celebrating or thanking employees for their time was to send them a hamper.
It's exactly what I did, actually.
So
exactly what I did.
And there was a nationwide shortage of things like wicker hampers. You just couldn't get them. They all the major suppliers ran out before Christmas, and then they couldn't get any more in stock until around about February, March time the following year. So, but it had its own, there were a variety of challenges. There was the challenge of the fact that we opened our cafe in the December before COVID. So we have a cafe 2 doors away from the delicatessen. So we had to obviously manage the fact that that was opening and closing, or closing and opening on a regular basis throughout the sort of 12 to 18 months after the 23rd of March. And obviously the change that we had to do for the business itself in terms of changing it from literally we were changed from a retail business into a full-blown almost 100% e-commerce business. And that in itself has its challenges, because when part of your business is e-commerce but not sort of not the predominantly largest part of the business, you're not maybe keeping stocks of boxes and stuff like that to the level that you need to when you're an e-commerce business. And we don't have a warehouse, so we were having to accommodate all of these demands for hampers and stuff like that within the confines of the shop, as well as running the shop for people coming in, not coming in, but sort of wanting things like bags of flour or whatever, and then going and doing home deliveries to people. It was tough, and then obviously since then it's had a different toughness in that everybody was thinking, people will just come back to the shops, only to be hit by an economic downturn, which has meant that footfall for a lot of businesses, including ourselves, went down a lot, and we just have to try and manage our way through that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you mentioned resilience earlier, and that's obviously a key player throughout all of these times, I guess. And you've just mentioned footfall has reduced, but at the same time, your costs will have increased, whether it's energy bills, rates, wages, all of that. So actually, you're being hit from both sides. So how have you stayed resilient in that?
It's a hard question to answer in some ways. You're 100% correct in that in one direction, prices have gone up and up, just to stay open, just to keep the refrigeration working, just to make sure that cheese and everything else is kept, doesn't go off because it needs to be refrigerated in the appropriate way. That in itself has increased our costs immensely. But as you say, at the same time, the number of people coming in the shop, the amounts that people are spending on each basket has probably gone down. So you have to take a decision, and you sort of the decision some decisions. Some people may think, well, is it worth staying open? What are my alternatives? I guess we don't really have that much of an alternative other than to try kind of keep going. So there are we have staff in I think we're somewhat fortunate in that we are what one would describe as a true family business, and it's myself and my wife who run the shop. My son, he during COVID discovered a skill none of us, I think including him, realized he had in being able to bake cakes and all sorts of things. So he's become our chief baker for our cafe. So everything that we do in the cafe, in terms of all the cakes and bakes and sausage rolls, etc., he makes all of those. His fiance runs the cafe, and her twin sister works with her. So they are on a they're all salaried and they get paid. I'll be honest and say myself and my wife don't necessarily always pay ourselves on time. And sort of in the last year, we're so in terms of what we could have paid ourselves, we're probably, or should have paid ourselves, we're probably behind that. But as with as any entrepreneur knows, so sometimes the only way to keep your business, your dream, whatever it is, afloat is you have to put your own money into it. And so that's what we're doing. And then using a phrase I never particularly like, but then thinking outside the box in terms of how can we, sort of generate additional new types of business and things like that. So, for example, this year, I'm a member of the Hunstanton advisory group, which is, so it's got nothing to do with being involved with councils or anything like that, but it's just business people who look at ways in which we can try and encourage more visitors to Hunstanton, improve the economic outlook for the area and stuff like that.
Yep.
And so one of the thoughts I had back in 22, which came to fruition this year in March, was to do a food and drink street festival in Hunstanton, where we put our money where our mouth was and sort of booked our own stand on there. But we had about 29 food and drink vendors brought on a rainy St. Patrick's Day, but that brought in masses of people into Hunstanton, and apparently, according to everybody, was very successful. And from our point of view, we made more money ourselves on that day than we would normally do on a Sunday by quite some way. But at the same time, it was a way of saying, look, this is what we do, this is what this is who we are, and reminding people who live in the area that we exist. And we have noticed that there are numerous people who have come into the shop since that date, and our next one is in June. But who maybe we haven't seen for a few years. So once again, as I say, you have to then think about ways beyond just I've got open the door, put the open sign on, and put the lights on, and then just wait for somebody to walk in. You have to actually sort of proactively try and get people to come in and give them a reason to come in.
Yeah, I mean, that's a key one. When times are tough, you do have to actually work harder. Obviously, my background is in marketing, and I often say to people, like if the market is harder to win, new work, then should you be doing more marketing or less marketing? Well, actually, it's more. And I know that's very easy for me to say as an agency owner, but actually, it's true. If you're just going to stay there and rest and just hope someone comes in, that's unlikely to happen. It doesn't necessarily you need to spend more. You just need to, you said think outside the box, but just implement other things that actually will give you a little bit of leverage, whether that's footfall for that day or footfall for the future. You definitely, as a business, need to be proactive. And I think another point you touched on actually was, with regard to paying yourself and putting money in. Business owners, lots of people only see the wins and, the benefits that you've got because you've had good years and the business owner's done well and things like that. They don't realise that actually there's times when it isn't all rosy, and actually it just needs to try and balance out.
Well, absolutely. It's always the same no matter what. It's, during the boom years of IT during the 2000s, everyone would always talk about, sort of startups and there would be stories about people who would, basically almost literally seemed to become millionaires overnight because they were working for a startup which had been bought by somebody, etc., etc. And it's the classic story. Those types of stories outweigh the reality of everything, which is that the vast majority of people work in those types of industries and they don't see those types of rewards. And similarly, with sort of people quite often think that, oh, you work for yourself, you must be loaded. And no, we're not. We have a reasonable lifestyle. I would say, without a shadow of a doubt, I don't earn even a fraction of what I earned when I was working for IT companies. Absolutely nowhere near, not even close. It would probably shock people how much or how little I actually pay myself during the course of the year. But I would say that my stress levels are down, where a lot of people might think that they're higher, would be higher because of those things. But I would say, most people in life and most people in jobs feel stressed when they're being targeted to do something, especially when they think to themselves, I don't really see how I'm going to do this. I don't see how this is achievable. And yet they're getting immense pressure from above to actually achieve that. We don't necessarily do things the way in which a lot of people would say, oh, this is the way to run a business. So did we set up a business plan? Did we have a business plan? Do we have a business plan? Probably not, really. I don't have something that says, right, here's what my target is for this financial year. Because if I was to do that, I think I would be sorely disappointed at the end of the year. And that's because there are so many elements which are outside of my control. I can't control what the government does in terms of economic policies. I can't in that case control how rich or how poor individuals feel. I do own a business in the specialty fine food industry. So therefore, by that very nature, it implies that people are having to feel a little bit more flush, a little bit more capable of going to a shop and spending that little bit more on something that will have offer them a higher level of quality than, for example, the everyday run-of-the-mill budget supermarket or something like that. So I can't control all of those things. So you kind of have to let that go, and you then think to yourself, well, we definitely follow what we do, our sales compared to what they were 10 years ago on a year by year. So we can see, we can see how do we compare to last year? How do we compare to the previous year? Are we up this year compared to last year? We've got all of those figures. What if we do X, Y, and Z? Will that impact the business? Doing things like launching our hamper side of the business, but focusing maybe a little bit more on corporate hampers and corporates. So that, at this time of year, probably the demand is slightly lower, but certainly there are corporate requirements, sort of very traditionally in and around Christmas. So maneuvering ourselves at a quiet time and putting things in place which are not necessarily going to earn us money here and now, but maybe will do later in the year. Doing things, as I said, like, for example, the food and drink festival, which brings in more people into town. Our shop is several paces away from the high street, and it's a bit like being off Broadway. So I wasn't really expecting. My son came in to run the shop on that day. My wife and I was kind of moving around the market, keeping all the vendors happy, seeing as I'd organised it all. My wife was on our stall. Our cafe was open. I wasn't expecting as many people as went that in our shop as actually went there, which was great. And so it encourages me to say, well, we need to try and do more of that. And the town needs to try and do more of that, because that's a benefit not just to us, but to the town. And so I have to look at it almost on a basis that, because, we're sort of a shop, a business in a town, part of a community. It's not quite like being an entrepreneur of, I don't know, a firewall business or something like that, where sort of it's all about the bits and bytes. It's all about how secure it is, etc., etc. Does it have any relevance to, if I had that business just off the high street, would anybody know or need to know? Probably not. But my business is all about serving people coffee, serving people salads, sausage rolls, local produce, all of that type of stuff. So it's it's, as I say, it has its challenges, but I don't have to commute.
I mean, there's lots of benefits there. You said about your stress levels, being down. And actually, I sometimes find, procrastination and our stress levels and all that, they all creep in when we either don't have clarity on what we're doing, or we don't have passion for what we're doing. When we're just being told to do something that we don't really understand why, or like you say, it's just tricky. That's when the stress creeps in. Yes, of course, running your own business, there's additional pressures, but actually, if you're clear what you're trying to do, which is get more people in to buy coffee and get more people in to buy the goods, and you're passionate about it, actually, it's an enjoyable process.
I would agree with you. I have, in a number of ways, I probably have an enviable life, in that, we are less than 5 minutes walk from the seafront. If I step out of my shop and look to my left, I can see the sea. Yesterday very choppy, today not so. But that means that, and I also have currently now 2 dogs. Not that long ago it was 4, but unfortunately we've lost 2 over the last couple of years. But I go for a walk when the tide is out, early in the morning. It's during the dark and during the winter, so head torch and reflective coats for the dogs. But we're out on the beach, no matter what the weather is, first thing in the morning. I walk about 2 or 3 miles in the morning, come back, then we open up the shop. And then when we close the shop, I take the dogs for a walk, once again, 2 or 3 miles. I walk about 6 miles a day just with the dogs. God knows how many flights of stairs I do in the shop, because we've got so we're not just a ground floor shop, we also have a basement with a cellar. So there's constantly walking up and down stairs, and we have our sort of like our main bread oven type thing downstairs as well. So there's all the preparation of sausage rolls, etc., etc. But when we close the shutters, and I've done my walk, that's really it. I'm not doing conference calls to the States at some sort of silly time of the evening or whatever, or very early in the morning with the Far East or whatever that may be. And as I say, so I'm not. We do genuinely kind of switch off. When I say switch off, we have our mobile phones. We are good at answering people's questions. Pretty much no matter what time of day it is, but it doesn't feel like work, which I think is the key thing.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. I want to ask you a little bit about the high street, because obviously you're just off the main road. The high street has taken several hits. I mean, firstly, I often say to people the way we use the high street has changed. We used to go to the high street to shop and then go home for coffee, but in fact now lots of people shop from home and then go to the high street for coffee, and that has been quite a change. But secondly, town centres, and I used to have a town centre office for 8 years, maybe 7-8 years, and very much the town centre, especially at lunchtime, was full up of people who worked in offices grabbing lunch and things like that, or you'd meet clients for coffee, or you'd go out with your team for coffee. And of course, since COVID, so many more people work from home. And I don't know whether you found it where you are, but I know that certainly in central London, it's quieter than it ever was. Yeah. Do you think the high street's been impacted by more people working from home?
I'm sure it has. But, it's like all these things, swings and roundabouts. I think the traditional high streets, or for example, the traditional, I used to do lots of work in the City of London. So for example, you'd go into the City of London, there'd be all the sort of cafe shops and stuff like that, all the pret-a-manger's, etc. And they'd all be very busy. And whereas you go out of London to the locations where people was commuting from, and all those high streets and shops and etc. would be quiet. And there has been a certain degree of turnaround in that, the benefits of people working from home sometimes benefits their local area, as opposed to the area where they used to work. I still think that, so even if somebody works at home, quite often people will think to themselves, so they're still in work, they're still in work mode, and they don't necessarily think to themselves, I know what, I'll go to the kitchen, I'll make myself a sandwich. If there's a half decent sandwich shop around the corner, there's still people who will say, actually, I'll just pop out, get a breath of some fresh air, get my mind off whatever I had my mind on, cup of coffee, maybe sit down on a park bench or something like that even, and take a break, as opposed to having working all day long at their screen, dashing into the kitchen, or having somebody bring in something from the kitchen and then carrying on. So I think it has had alternate benefits, but the high street. The high street has changed and is changing. Just look at all the department stores that have closed down, and look at what most of them, in some way, shape, or form, are turning into. They're turning into leisure centres with bowling alleys and stuff like that in them. And the high street, for quite some while, certainly in the 10 years that we've been in business, there's always been reported that for the high street to survive, it needs to change and become more of a leisure environment where people are meeting up for drinks and etc. And sort of a little bit more, almost as if people are on a holiday in Spain or something like that. But at the same time, I think that was the general thought far more during and immediately after the COVID side of things, because a lot of people thought that the world has now definitely 100% changed. Nobody's going to go to shops, nobody's going to everyone's just going to buy from the internet. And yet now quite a lot of online businesses that started during COVID have all closed, because let's face it, people are human beings are social animals, and it's there are lots of things that people carry on doing because it's more convenient in a way to just go onto Amazon and do sort of put in whatever it is you're looking for, and because you have all the Amazon partners in the Amazon marketplace, it's like a glorified massive high street, and in a lot of instances you get it the following day, so it's convenient. But at the same time, people do want to and do like to go out. They like to browse things. They like to meet up with other people. They like to people watch. They like to do all these things. So the high street needs to kind of end up reflecting that.
Yeah, I agree. I remember I was speaking to a publican. It was shortly after COVID, actually. And what I sort of said to them was, I'd always thought, I went to the pub for, a couple of pints, maybe a bite to eat. But actually, during lockdown, when the pubs were closed, I didn't struggle with eating or drinking. And I realised, actually, what they're selling is that social interaction. Mm-hmm. Because that was the thing. Yeah, if I wanted a beer and some food, I could have that at home as much as and in fact, it was much cheaper. I could drink a can of beer that cost me £1 or £6 for a pint in the pub. But actually, the £6 pint in the pub brought so many other benefits of getting together with friends, that social interaction, that the stepping out the house. And I think it was that real understanding that pubs or coffee shops, actually they provide more than what the actual product is that they're selling. It's the experience that they're selling.
I agree. I agree. It's I think a fairly common train of thought for sort of shops like ours, for example, is that it's not quite so much nowadays. The products that we sell are one thing, but it's also the experience. It's the fact that people come in and we sell a lot of cheese. We are we like to say that we're more cheesemonger than Deli, but also more Deli than a cheesemonger in that respect. But when people come in, it's, oh, what type of cheese do you have? Or I'm looking for something that is, a common enough term that is used is I'm looking for a strong cheese. Now that does encourage us to then say, well, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about blue cheese, hard cheese, soft cheese, cows, goats, sheep milk? What type of cheese? And you can engage with people and sort of end up selling them something which they never expected. Or I always see it as a challenge when somebody comes in and somebody says they don't like blue cheese, and I say, well, what, you mean any blue cheese? Well, yeah, I think so. And I said, well, I think you might find that that's not the case. What type of blue cheese have you typically had? And you find out that it's something like a Stilton or something like that. So I take out a different cheese and I say, humour me, just try a little bit of this. I would say 9 times out of 10 when I do that, not only do they suddenly realise that there is a blue cheese that they like, but they end up buying it. But you don't get that type of experience. You don't get that type of interaction in a supermarket. It's you get the convenience of a supermarket. It's all wrapped, packed, whatever. You can go along and just pick something up, but people will stick to what they know on the basis that they don't know. They think that they don't like a particular product, and we do on a regular basis, and also when we have the street markets, do tasters, and people taste things, and then all of a sudden, not only do they realise they like it, but it encourages them to come back and say, I tried a cheese from you last time, and I can't remember what it's called. And you realise what it was, and they've come back and bought more because it's something that they've discovered.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's the deal. If I'm ever up in Norfolk, I'm going to travel down to find you. I would say I don't like blue cheese, and I'm going to see the challenge of converting me. Because, yes, I probably have only tried one of my dad's when I was maybe a teenager.
Okay.
And I probably haven't touched blue cheese since. So
it's not unusual.
Yeah. So that's the challenge. So I'm going to be along one day. Just to finish today, I just want to ask you, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe thinking of starting a business?
Any particular type of business, or just
any business? Yeah. What do you think they should know? What's been something that you maybe weren't aware of, or you learnt during your time in business?
Oh, God, it could, so it's one of those things where I guess there could be a really long list, or it could be just a very short list. It's so it all depends on how hard I think about it. But I think first and foremost, if you're going to start a business, it has to be something that I think you have to be really passionate about. And with that passion, I think there needs to be some knowledge. So I would say that quite often the two will probably come together, because you can't be passionate about something without actually knowing something about it. Although I'm pretty sure I've come across a few people who have been passionate about something and they clearly know nothing about it at all. But you need that, because whatever the challenge is and whatever new challenge you come across, you almost need to rely on that as a reminder to you as to why you're doing this, and a reminder to you as to, sort of why you keep going. And then on top of that, from my own personal experience and my own, sort of my own personality, I come up with hundreds of ideas it feels like on a weekly basis in terms of what I could be doing, should be doing, whatever. It's a case of having to prioritize these, and sometimes my wife goes, "Oh God, you haven't thought, what is it you thought of this time?"
Yeah.
But I think you have to also, there has to be some structure, but at the same time, you also have to be fluid enough and nimble enough and open enough to allow yourself to come up with ideas, to allow yourself to think through those ideas. What are the pros? What are the cons? How expensive would it be to do something? What could be the outcome of this? How quickly can you implement it? How would it look? How does it compare to what your competition is doing? Does it give you an opportunity to do something before somebody else does? And how are you going to capitalize on that in that case? I would say you have to be very passionate about something. You have to be open to new ideas. You have to be open. I think you have to be also open to looking at what other people are doing. So whenever we don't get away much, but when we do get away, we're always drawn towards food markets, food shops, and stuff like that, and almost like a bit of a busman's holiday in that respect.
Yeah.
But it's looking to see what other people are doing, and you think to yourself, "Oh God, look at that! I never thought of that," and that's a great idea. But I could take that and I could do it in a way that would suit our business and our clients and whatever. And you sort of take, you can be a bit of a magpie as well as things don't have to be 100% original all the time.
No, you can always adapt an idea and make it fit your business. I think that's really key. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I wish you all the best with
thank you very much.
the deli and the coffee shop. And
I look forward to challenging you to trying a blue cheese.
Deal. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Balanced Ambition podcast. I genuinely hope the stories inspire you as much as they inspire me. If you found value in today's conversation, please share it with a friend. And remember, by subscribing, you won't miss an episode, and it would truly mean the world to me. Stay balanced, and I'll see you next time.